It's that time of year again, time to count down our best and worst of the year, because top 10 bests are crapshoots for views. This is the perfect time for it. But, I mean, it's also just kind of a critic tradition, best and worst of the year. We're going to go ahead and do the best stuff first, and then we'll get to the worst stuff. But here we go, best 10 movies that I saw this year.
Before we get started, a quick honorable mention to Europa Reports. A much more streamlined, realistic trip in outer space. I appreciated the performances and the overall feeling of the movie, but the plot's predictability kept me from placing it in the top 10. It was so easy to predict the script might as well have been done paint by numbers. At number 10, we have At World's End. Being the weakest of the Cornetto trilogy is by no means a negative thing, because it's still better than the average Hollywood production. Director Edgar Wright brings some of his action chops from Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, and the ensemble comedy cast he assembles steps up to the challenge and proves themselves capable and believable. It also wears Simon Pegg's performance like a badge of honor. It's easily his best performance to date. Not because he's necessarily funnier in this than in Shaun of the Dead or Hot Fuzz, but because his character in this has some real meat to it, outside of the typical protagonist arc that Shaun and Nicholas Angel had. Number 9, The Hunger Games: Catching Fire. Everything I liked about the first Hunger Games was still there. Everything I thought could have been better from the first has been improved. The stakes are raised without repeating the exact same plot as the first movie in a glaringly obvious way. The characters don't retread the same issues or dilemmas that they did in the first movie. The pacing adds up, the camera's on a tripod this time so you can see the action scenes without feeling nauseous, and the performances are solid. Catching Fire is a golden example of what a good sequel should do, and I'm really going to enjoy this movie while I can, because the splitting the final book into 2 movies instead of 1 trick never works. Ever. Number 8, Gravity. Every time one of these top 10 best of the year lists gets made, we are bound by critic law to include at least one artsy movie in the final list, and Gravity is going to fit the bill for mine. Succeeding in both claustrophobia and agoraphobia at the same time, Gravity is a technical marvel that honestly is one of the scariest movies I've seen in quite a long time. The feeling of helplessness and isolation is very much akin to Open Water or Alien, and for some that's the problem. It's not necessarily going to be for everyone, but that's what makes it artsy. Number 7, Man of Tai Chi. A lot of people aren't too big on Keanu Reeves' acting, and while I personally enjoy him, I'd be lying if I said I didn't see where they're coming from. Man of Tai Chi puts the former Ted's Excellent Adventurer in the director's chair for the first time, and you'll be pleased to know the man knows what he's doing. The brutal fight scenes are captured magnificently, and it's refreshing to see a style like Tai Chi be interpreted in a new way in the States, much like Tony Jaa did for Muay Thai. The movie has an irresistibly old-fashioned sense of grounded believability, even going so far as to offer a reasonable explanation for why in the hell an underground fight club would be a profitable crime ring in the year 2013. The third act of the main character's arc is a bit rushed, and the music sometimes ruins the mood the actors get across, but with every other action movie these days trying to compete with Marvel superheroes, classy, refined action films like these are a dying art. And I respect Man of Tai Chi not just for preserving them, but for doing it really, really well. Also, Keanu Reeves is great at playing a villain. I wish he'd do it more. Like, all the time. Number 6, Iron Man 3. Shane Black made the best damn Iron movie he possibly could have. Following up the Avengers is no easy task. You'd imagine that they would just crank up even more action, add a lot more comic relief characters, and try to live up to the fun that Joss Whedon miraculously pulled off. Instead, we get a character study on Tony Stark. Having spent 2 whole movies beaming and gloating in his own accomplishments, the revelation of the existence of Norse gods and superhumans leaves Tony with a feeling that he's not familiar with or capable of handling very well, as is evidenced by his increasing panic attacks at the mere mention of the events from the Avengers. Going back to basics was a bold move, and it paid off. Iron Man 3 manages to avoid the third movie curse by possibly being the best of the Iron Man trilogy. And for those of you heading down to the comments section, unless you're about to offer up a better idea on how they were supposed to fit in alien technology, crashing to Earth, being outfitted into 10 rings, and how that fits into the challenge of Tony Stark's arc, you can go ahead and save yourself the trouble of bitching and moaning about how they screwed up the Mandarin. I don't want to hear it. Number 5, The Conjuring. James Wan does it again, proving that the horror genre still has hope. Subtlety goes a long way with this, as the mood and atmosphere sets up the scares that gets under your skin rather than just jumps out at you. The final shot of the movie perfectly sums up the overall approach that Wan went with the movie, and it stands high above the crappy Paranormal Activity movies and all their wannabes. The performances all around also help to elevate the movie beyond being just something to watch on Halloween. Number 4.
David, please. You have to get me out of here.
Evil Dead. I do not envy the person that is tasked with the responsibility of remaking what is arguably the biggest cult classic of all time. Even the mere thought of it screams betrayal, that nothing is sacred anymore and we should just bend ourselves over a barrel to make things easier. But in a complete upset, this year's Evil Dead wasn't just better than we thought it would be, it was good on its own merit. It managed to be one of the few remakes that justifies its own existence. It only makes major changes to the elements that are outdated and wouldn't fly with a modern audience, which is half the point of a remake in the first place. The film is arguably one of the best looking films of the year, feeling as ostensibly trashy as the script suggests, and without spoiling anything, it does a fantastic job at playing with your mind with things that you can't see versus the things that you can see. The only reason that it's not higher up on this list is because it loses its stability in the third act, and it nearly becomes unbalanced, mainly because it becomes apparent that the writers of the movie don't know how to count to 5. Regardless, Evil Dead is a fun ride that's perfect for a party. Number 3, The Iceman. Biopic movies that are all about a person's life place all of their bets on the performance of the lead actor, and in the case of The Iceman, it's a smart bet that pays off. Michael Shannon plays the role of a man that comes into the business of killing for money, but puts the well-being of his family first and foremost. It's paced very much like a gangster film, i.e. very slowly, but I hesitate to call it a gangster film since that's not really what's happening with the rise and fall of the story. It's essentially the beginning and end of his career as a contract killer, where in real life, he killed over 100 people, and if you want to see the power of a single performance, check this movie out. Oh sure, everyone else in the movie does really well, I'd even say they're great, but Michael Shannon in the starring role is downright chilling to the bone. His screen presence is palpable because he has no time to waste trying to look cool or monologue to make some prolific point. Just kill, clean up, get paid. Number 2, Pacific Rim. Aliens are attacking, punch it with a robot. That's the basis of Pacific Rim, the movie that gave me the most joy at the movie theater this year. I predict that in years to come, this movie will be the ruler with which future summer action movies are measured by. It's easy to see how black and white monster movies are cheesy and awful and make for a good laugh, but when I was a kid, that's not what I saw. What I saw is now available for all the world to experience in Pacific Rim. A masterful blend of practical effects and computer effects, a plot element called drifting that sidesteps the pesky dialogue droll that usually plagues monster movies, and a beautiful sense of wonder and excitement completely free of needlessly complicated pessimism and irony that has become the norm in popular big-budget films. And in my number 1 spot, Wolf of Wall Street, or as I like to call it, Ferris Bueller all grown up. Martin Scorsese's latest is also his funniest. DiCaprio's performance here is the best of his career, or at least it's my favorite of his career. Our main character strikes out to start his own business in selling stocks, first with small stuff that is literally called penny stocks. But after teaching his morally corrupt business methods to criminals, he begins raking in more and more money, which of course leads to the lifestyle befitting that of people with more money than they know what to do with. Keeping in mind what our main character is depicted as when the movie starts and what he eventually becomes, gives the movie a bit of a tragic element to it. It's both a testament to the influence power can have on one person, as well as a message on the status of businesses like the stock market. And yet the movie all brilliantly does this without ever having the characters sit down and spell it out for the audience like they would if Christopher Nolan was directing it. This is the kind of subtlety in movies that I fear we may lose one day, and it does me damn proud to see it in a movie as over the top as this one is. Speaking of which, the movie is funny, really funny. If you give this movie a watch, and you should, there will be numerous occasions where you'll swear the actors break character entirely and just start laughing straight into the camera. This was a movie I knew nothing about and didn't care much for when trailers hit, and now here I am telling you that aside from the highly questionable editing, Wolf of Wall Street was the best movie and my personal favorite of 2013.